Black Adam busted in the box office this weekend from Warner Bros Discovery and their latest entry in the DC universe. Now, audience scores have been very positive for this movie, even though the critics have panned it. But is it enough? Is it enough for this movie to actually reach a financial break-even point and turn a profit at the theaters? We want to talk about that today because we're starting to see a trend, like we talked about in a video earlier this week, that even though audiences are enjoying some properties, there seems to be a trend of there not being enough of them anymore. Let's get into it. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's great to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment, hit that little subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, do leave a comment before you head out the door today. We've got a lot to talk about. Always love getting viewer feedback on what you think. Did you see Black Adam? What do you think it's going to wind up doing at the box office? That's something we're definitely going to talk about today because there's a lot to discuss here. And I think even though the movie looks like the audience is really enjoying it, the numbers at this point don't bode well for it. Now, before everybody jumps out of their chair, the people that are the big DC fans and all this saying I'm a hater and all this, again, I just look at the numbers. We're going to talk about historical trends, how these movies tend to fare based on their opening weekends, and let's look at what it actually costs to produce this film and market it into the theaters because that's what's important at the end of the day. But let's go through a few things first. So as everybody saw last week, when critic scores begin to come out, they weren't very good at all for Black Adam, dipping down into the 30s on occasion in the total critic score. But if we went in, I showed on Twitter last week that if you went into the top critic score, it was even worse, dipping below 30% into the upper 20s. A 29% top critic score for any film is usually a bad sign, although, of course, we have seen quite frequently these days that critic scores often differ greatly from actual audience scores, and that's exactly what happened here. The audience score at 90% of verified audience, 91% of all audience, that's a great score. And Dwayne Johnson even took to Twitter recently, putting out this post, quote, "This phenomenal 90% audience score for Black Adam is so gratifying for so many reasons. 15 years. Thank you all so much for all the love and support. In the end, the only thing that matters to me is sending the people home happy, and that's what I will always fight for." I love this kind of enthusiasm from the headline actors and actresses in these sorts of films. This is exactly the kind of thing that you need to put out there in social media to continue to help build positive word of mouth for a film like this, because frankly, the box office start for this was rather soft when you consider what type of movie this is and the budget involved, and that's what we want to talk about. This movie is going to need probably at least half, if not 2/3, of the huge leg out positive word of mouth that Top Gun Maverick got a few months ago in order for this movie to cross the threshold of profitability, or at least just break even. And from the Sunday morning update at the numbers, here is your weekend box office estimates as of this moment, folks. Black Adam bringing in domestically $67 million. That figure may actually be a little on the low side. I will talk about that one in a minute. Ticket to Paradise, $16.3 million. This is another one that appears to be overperforming initial projections, thinking that this film would land somewhere between $10 and $12 million in its opening weekend right now, coming in at 16 plus. That is a nearly 30% overperformance from projections. This is a romantic comedy starring George Clooney and Julia Roberts. Then, of course, we have Smile, a horror movie that just won't quit, that audiences keep loving. Another $8.3 million this weekend, bringing its domestic total to $84 million. Halloween Ends in its second weekend, falling about 5% below Smile, a Halloween horror competitor. But, of course, Halloween Ends was placed day and date onto Peacock, as we discussed before. And then, of course, Lyle Lyle Crocodile rounding out the top 5, a kids' movie from Sony Pictures. And as of just moments ago, the numbers managed to get the international box office updated, putting it in at $73 million, which is an estimated figure as of right now we believe is being sourced from Deadline magazine. That brings the global haul estimate as of this moment to $140 million. And on the surface, that's a great number for any movie to start with, but this isn't any movie. This is a $200 million superhero production budget film. This is a film that really needs a big start out of the gate to clear that price hurdle. Black Adam thundering to 60 to 62 million. Dwayne Johnson's best opening as a leading man. This was from the Saturday AM update, but they have some interesting pieces of information in here that I do want to cover. From the article, as we already told you, Friday repped The Rock's best opening day in a solo star vehicle. Now at 26.8 million on that opening Friday. Black Adam and Universal counter-programming older demo female skewing George Clooney, Julia Roberts romantic comedy Ticket to Paradise, which is overperforming. With a $16 million opening, it was supposed to do 12, are pushing weekend ticket sales to 109.5 million. The first time that the weekend box office has spilled over 100 million since July 22nd through 24th, when Nope opened to number 1 and all titles grossed a cumulative 124 million. In addition, there's a great diverse turnout of audiences for Black Adam with 29% Black, 26% Hispanic, 25% Caucasian, and 13% Asian. There's nothing to complain about here, particularly on the exhibition side, as there's traffic in theaters after a dull spell, sans mass appealing product during this part of the eased thing. And for some information on the post-track score, I found this really heartening. Also working in favor of Black Adam is that audiences aren't entirely shrugging it off at a B+, the same grade as DC's other darker intellectual properties like the Suicide Squad movies. 4 stars from general audiences, and 90% positive from kids under 12 on ComScore Screen Engine's post-track, and 89% on the Rotten Tomatoes audience meter. Of course, that's now at 90% since this was published. This despite the fact that critics found Black Adam entirely confusing, now at 41% on Rotten Tomatoes. So at least that divergence between critic score and audience score seems to be playing in Black Adam's favor, as audiences are apt to usually buck critics' opinions these days or just ignore them entirely. The problem, of course, as we said in the intro, is that there doesn't seem to be enough of the audience going to see this. Much like a video we did earlier this week on the Star Wars show on Disney+, Andor. Lots of audiences that are watching the show seem to really enjoy it. There are just simply not enough of them to justify the massive budget that was put into making it. Black Adam, with $200 million and assuredly another $100 million plus in marketing, has about a $300 million, probably at the low end, all in cost for Warner Bros Discovery Studios and distribution channels. Now that means that this movie really needs to get at least $600 million from the global theatrical market just to have a shot at breaking even. Of course, if they spent more on post-production, if they spent more on marketing this film, that number's only going to go higher. Why? Because we know factually that theaters domestically, US and Canada, share back rentals to the distributors in the neighborhood of 53 to 55%. Internationally, that figure drops to around 43%. That means that if a movie makes $100 million in the North American market, about 53 to 55 million of that on average is going back to the studio, and in the international market, 43 million of that 100 million is going back to the studio and distributor in that case. So we really have to climb here. With only a $140 to $150 million opening weekend, that means that Black Adam is going to have to leg out at somewhere around a 4x, which would frankly be unheard of for any superhero film out there. And typically with those films, the higher they start, think of Marvel pictures like Doctor Strange or Thor: Love and Thunder, the lower their runoff is, meaning that if Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness opens at 187 million, it finished up with about a 2.15 to 2.19 leg out or runoff from opening weekend. Thor: Love and Thunder opened with about $40 million less than Doctor Strange 2 and made it to about a 2.5 or so leg out from that figure. With Black Adam starting even lower, there's still a better chance without as much front loading that it could leg out even higher. But even if it makes it to a 3x leg out or over 3x leg out like Spider-Man No Way Home, it still wouldn't actually turn a profit at the theaters at this point. So again, as a reminder, Thor: Love and Thunder opened with almost $145 million domestically and about another 150 or 140 or so internationally. It almost made it to the $300 million global opening mark. And look where it finished at $745. If we scroll down, we can see here under the metrics, the legs for the domestic box office was 2.38. So if Black Adam performs at around the same rate, it's going to come well under what it needs to make just to get to a break-even level, let alone even think about making a dime in profit. I would say that based on previous performance metrics for superhero films of this nature, it's most likely that with a roughly $150 or so million opening weekend, Black Adam is probably going to conclude its run somewhere in the $450 to $500 million range at best. Now, again, that could be dead wrong if word of mouth for this movie continues to be off the charts, but it really has to blow the doors off. It's got to get to that Top Gun Maverick level of furor to get it to that point, okay? Because Top Gun Maverick opened with $126 million domestically, and it legged out to almost a 6 to 7x level of run. That is a unicorn in that case. Black Adam doesn't need quite that much, but it's going to need a lot of help from all around. And the other thing to remember is that just like Walt Disney Studios, Warner Bros Discovery takes all of their own properties like Black Adam and all the other movies that they make, and they go straight to HBO Max. There is no third-party streaming or linear delivery distribution channel for it to go through. Other movie studios like Universal or Sony Pictures have billion-dollar deals with places like Netflix and Amazon for these movies to head after they conclude their theatrical run. Even in the case of Universal, with it keeping it on Peacock for a few months, they still have a big contract, one with Amazon and another with Netflix, depending on whether the movie is either an animated feature like Minions: The Rise of Gru or live action like Jurassic World Dominion. Sony Pictures has just struck a new deal with Netflix at the end of last year, moving their entire post-theatrical slate from Starz, where it had been for a number of years, now to Netflix. So any box office snafus, like Sony recently had with The Woman King, for example, which didn't get anywhere close to turning a profit, and it probably won't. That's okay, because Netflix is writing a big fat check to get that film after it gets out of the theater. That's part of the deal. Warner Bros. Discovery and Walt Disney Studios basically have to rely on hoping that they get enough PVOD sales or premium video on demand sales, along with potentially watching it or new signups for their proprietary streaming services. But those type of signups that you get don't tend to stick. So this is why it's becoming more and more of an untenable situation, at least in the short term, to have these kinds of movies with these massive production budgets not actually make their money back in the theater. It puts studios like Walt Disney and Warner Brothers too much in the hole and increases the amount of financial risk. So I promise you at this point, those kind of studios are probably reassessing going forward what they're going to reliably allocate to actually produce these sorts of films. You see, things like Black Adam or Thor: Love and Thunder were greenlit with budgets years ago before we got to this point of, let's call it. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you smash the like and subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, and do leave a comment below the video before you head out the door today. Want to get your thoughts on this movie and where you think the box office is going from here. Take care.